Hello and welcome back to the Daily Bible Summary, where the goal is to renew our mind as we read a new chapter every day and ask the question, what can I learn? Today's episode is entitled Money and Eternity. Read Luke chapter 16 if you have not, and if you have, let's get started. This chapter contains some of Jesus' most challenging teachings about money and stewardship and eternal consequences. As we will see, we are planting the seeds of our eternal harvest here in this life, and how we handle our money is a part of that planting. Jesus starts with another parable, this time of a dishonest manager. The manager is about to be fired, so he comes up with a plan. He calls in his master's debtors and reduces what they owe. One from 100 measures of oil to 50, another from 100 measures of wheat to 80. Now, why did he do that? He did it so that when he loses his job, these people will welcome him into their homes. What makes us scratch our heads is that the master commends the dishonest servant for his shrewdness. And Jesus says that the sons of men are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. Now, is Jesus commending dishonesty? No, that's not it at all. He's just pointing out that the manager used the power he had, understanding that he needed to secure his future. Now, the manager faced a crisis, and he acted decisively to prepare for what was coming. Jesus is basically saying that if worldly people are this shrewd about temporal security, we need to be that shrewd about eternal security. The principle that Jesus is working on is that if you're not faithful with very much, if you're not faithful with very little, you're not going to be faithful with much. If you're dishonest in a little, you're going to be dishonest as much as well. So, if you can't be faithful with worldly stuff, who's going to trust you with true riches? I think the implication is with eternal riches. Jesus says no servant can serve two masters. No, you're going to have to hate one and love the other. Or you're going to be devoted to one and you're going to hate the other. You just can't serve God and mammon at the same time. So we need to ask ourselves, who's first in my life? The Pharisees, who loved money, Luke says, heard all of these things, and they begin to ridicule Jesus. But Jesus simply points out that they have everything backwards, and they're exalting what is for God an abomination. So think about this. The Pharisees, while they looked righteous on the outside, and people did respect them, God was able to see their hearts. God could look on the inside where he could see that they loved money. They justified themselves, that's for sure. And people praised them, but what people praised them for, God found detestable. Now, it is a difficult portion of Luke, the next part, where Jesus talks about the kingdom being taken by force and the law not passing away until all is accomplished. But one possible understanding may be that the leaders were trying to force themselves into the kingdom, perhaps by their wealth, but certainly by not adhering to the law as it was written, though they did love their traditions. The law will be fulfilled, and the kingdom will be available at that point, but it will come to pass in the manner that the law said it would, not by their contrived methods. Don't overlook the fact that between all of this talk of money and stewardship, that Jesus mentions divorce and remarriage. Again, we see the pattern is supposed to be permanence. Otherwise, adultery is the result of this breaking of marriages and forming new ones. I think that it's possible that since the Pharisees loved money, as Luke has just said, it also may be a nod towards covetousness, since more than one marriage has been broken because someone was covetous of another person and just had to be with them. Jesus tells the story about a rich man then, who dressed in purple and fine linen and feasted sumptuously every day. At his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. And the implication here is that Lazarus didn't even get the crumbs. Even the dogs came by to lick his sores. The poor man eventually dies and is carried by the angels to Abraham's side. The rich man also dies and doesn't get a heavenly escort, he simply is buried. But in Hades, he lifts up his eyes, being in torment, and sees Abraham far off and Lazarus at his side. He cries out for mercy, asking Abraham to send Lazarus to dip his finger in the water and cool his tongue. Apparently, he did know his name. Abraham tells him that it's not possible for that to happen. And here the roles are obviously reversed. He is suffering now where Lazarus is comforted. Besides, the reason it's not possible is they're all separated by some great chasm that's been fixed. They can't get across to the other side. No one can cross from here to there, and no one can cross from there to here. Suddenly, the rich man feels concern for his brothers. They have to be warned. He doesn't want them to join him in this terrible place of torment. However, Abraham points out that they have Moses and the prophets, which should be enough for them to avoid the same fate. But the rich man insists that if someone will go to them for the dead, they will repent. And yet Abraham says if they don't hear Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced if someone should rise from the dead. Oh, how interesting is that? Because here Jesus is showing that this life in the here and now determines eternity. There's no second chance after death. If people aren't going to listen to the scriptures now, they won't listen to someone even if they rise from the dead. See, the Pharisees had the law and the prophets, and they would soon see Jesus risen from the dead, or at least they would hear about him risen from the dead, and yet many would still not believe. So what can we learn? There are several lessons from today's chapter. First, you must choose. Do you serve God or do you serve money? You cannot serve both. Either you will love one and hate the other, but there is no neutrality. Money's not evil, but loving money is. What do you love, God or money? If you are anxious when you think about losing money, if you're constantly calculating how to get more, if your decisions are driven by financial gain rather than obedience to God, maybe you're serving money. Second, how you handle money reveals whether you can be trusted with true riches. Jesus says that if you are not faithful with worldly wealth, who's going to trust you with the true riches? Money is a test. God is watching how you handle it. Are you generous or are you greedy? Do you use it for eternal purposes or just for yourself? If God looked at how you spend your money, what would he conclude about your heart? The bank account that you have, the credit card statements that you get, they all tell the truth about what you value. Where you spend your money shows what you value. Are you faithful with the little? The third thing is that eternity is real, and this life determines where you spend it. As you examine the rich man's life, perhaps you see a bit of covetousness as well. The rich man lived as though his life was all that mattered. Perhaps he was just assuming that heaven was guaranteed to him. He feasted every day. But more than that, while enjoying all that life had to offer here, he ignored Lazarus at his gate. There was no compassion. Then he died, and everything changed. There was no second chance after death. The chasm was fixed. Are you living like eternity is real? Or are you living like this life is all that there is? Because again, the decisions you make now have eternal consequences. If you died today, where would you spend eternity? Tomorrow, Lord willing, we will move into Luke chapter 17, where Jesus will teach about faith and forgiveness and talk a little bit more about the coming of the kingdom. But as we reflect on the relationship with money and between money and eternity, and the reality that how we live now in this life does help determine how we live in the next life, we will continue each day to renew our minds.